Alright, hi guys, this is Paul. Forgot to turn on the mic. Alright, hi guys, this is Paul. Welcome to Physical Trader. Right now, broadcasting from a coffee shop in Cần Thơ right now, which have a lot of people here. Maybe there's a wedding something, so a bunch of people wearing the traditional clothes of Vietnam, to attending wedding something like that. So, in this video, we'd love to talk about the roadmap on how to become commodity traders and how to get advantage in this game as you play a new player or you having sort of skills. And I do believe that every single thing is having its own way of developing, has its own way of going to that direction to be faster, more efficient, without have to wasting a bunch of time on nonsense things. So if you want to learn and study in order to make money, you have to study money, right? If you want to learn how to be a doctor, you need to learn how to go to medical school. And if you learn how to become a commodity trader, you need to actually learn how to do it, how to do so. And this business is actually one of the most simple business in the whole world to my eyes. The only thing that you need to deal with is that you will need to deal with a super high volume product, a legal framework in order to make sure that a product gonna get from one country to another without messing up the whole process, without messing up the supply chain because your nonsense mistake. So the industry is about being a little bit more perfect and executing your way, uploading the product, giving product to the other country that follow all the regulation, and you make sure that you're not doing anything wrong so that the product gonna get stuck at the border gate. And in order to learn the knowledge and acquire the knowledge, there's not actually a very clear path in order to just go on the internet, watch some online videos and figure it out, all right? So you will need to learn from the people who actually have done that before in order to get the best result out of it. So if you don't want to losing all these money that you probably could, then you need to have an idea of who you should learn from. And this is gonna be the whole guideline on how to approaching an industry, approaching a commodities. So first of all, there's nothing better than going and talk to a businessman who already in the business, who are running this thing for 10, 20, 30 years, and they are having a facility and they export this type of product. You go in there and you could say that you are representing a buyer or you are having a buyer and you start to learn the industry. You could approach it any ways that you think is possible for yourself. It's not gonna be that tough. You need to travel to the factory, to the sourcing area, to the places where people are already having this product in place and producing 1,000 tons of that every single month, and they're having an industry of that product. So you went there and you started to talk to the people who are loading the container, all right? Just using your motorbike, whatever tool that you have, car, truck, doesn't matter, walk there, all right? Go and talk to the owner and started to learn of every piece of information of how it's work, what type of paperwork that is required to send to a certain market, what type of paperwork that is not required to send a certain market, what side this type of market buy and what side that type of market buy. You will have roughly idea of how the whole market works after you're talking to first people, first person, the first owner in the industry, and then afterward you go to the second, third, fourth, fifth owner, and they started to take you more seriously because right now they understand that you are in the game a little bit more and you have a basic knowledge of how the industry works. So the first thing that you need to do is just go out there, go to the sourcing place directly. I already talked about this in the past, but I wanted to repeat it in different ways so that you understand what are you dealing with, what you need to do, what step that you need to take in order to get there. All right, you're not just gonna get there by sitting at home and watching some bunch of YouTube videos just like this one. You need to go out there, go to the field, and then talk to the owner. Come on. So that's what you need to focus on. The second thing, after you go and talk to these bunch of people, you understand the product, you're shooting the video around the whole thing. You take a look at the product, hold it on your hand, explain everything that you should learn from the find owner of these factories, to make a videos, introduce client with this type of product, what size, this size, that size. And that's the basic thing. You have the product, you have knowledge, you have something, you have a connection, you have a factory that you could connect with, to sell the product. So it's really important to know that do you have the advantage in that product or not, and what type of product that you could sell. And based on my experience, the product that have less than sort of 2 or 5 billion global trade values, global trade, which means that it export from one country to another, not the value of product that on the revenue of big corporation that's selling that specific product to retailer. It's just the value of whole container transport from one country to another. So to me, if that industry is less than $7 billion US dollars, usually it's pretty easy to get into. That first of all, because the big player, they're not really into that. You got medium-sized and small-sized business only into that industry. So you have a lot more chance to be success and acquire clients and solving people's need in that certain industry. So after that, you took in that industry out, and then the other thing is that require really complex plantations or a really complex facility in order to processing that, or it's just a small and mom and pop industry where you have thousands of warehouses that you could potentially reaching out to and talk to all these small mom and pop owners around the whole country and loading the whole container with them. So if in the scenario one where you should have like a couple of big factories in order to process the things, then you should not jump into that industry. If you're not building a plantation just like them, all right? You're a commodity trader. The role of y'all, the reason why we work with you, the reason why people wanted to work with you and spend money with you and buying from you, because you take more risk. And the industry that have 2 factories, it's a really small industry. A bunch of people know these big players, the big exporter, and they're just gonna buy directly from them with a very low side of the risk. So you need to start with an industry that have a bunch of small mom and pop facility around the whole country of yours in order to get into that much more easier. All right, so that's one of the really important factors that gonna signify the industry easy to get to, since you have a bunch of mom and pop people could pack a whole container. And from that, all right, you have circled down to some specific industry that you could start with. For example, plywood or plywood, or in Vietnam case, you got charcoal, you got fresh produce, you got like jackfruit, you got dragon fruit, you got whatever fresh produce out there. Also, you got some like cashew, you got a bunch of different type of nuts, you got vegetable, and you sometimes you got the raw material from certain type of industry like metal, all right? You got like wastes metal you could resell to people. Or you could refinery, you could run some specific type of refinery that cycling the metal, that cycling meat, fat product, or you could purchasing oil in order to let it fall down to a layer and then process it, make it more cleaner in order to export it to some plantation out there. There are a bunch of things that you could do. But the key thing is that industry needs to have a niche where there's a lot of mom and pop facility that could open up and running that and selling that and still make a sustainable living. So after you notify and after you knowing that thing, it's going to be much easier to get into that industry. Why? Because they having these certain type of environment where every mom and pop business could start it and still make a pretty good living and money. So after that, after you determine the industry, you determine the characteristic of it, and you see that, oh, this is an industry that catches the scribe, that polishes the scribe, and I think that certainly do it. Then next about the clients. If you just started, I recommend you to go to a market that's pretty nearby to you, but not so near, like it's not reaching the border gate with each other, because if people from the border gate, they could easily understand how the industry works, and they certainly could speak your language also. So the pricing gap gonna be really thin for you to get into that, and the risk that you're dealing with and taking the risk for a whole container gonna be big. So you don't want that to happen. So you want to talk with a market that not having the borderland with you. For example, if you are in Vietnam and you're working with China and you're selling product to China as a commodity trader, there's not going to be a lot of advantage in you if you don't own any facilities. Why? Because China is pretty close to Vietnam, and Chinese people, they could speak Vietnamese, they could fly to Vietnam, they could marry a wife there, they could do whatever they want, and also they have the advantage even more than you. They know both sides of the market, and being here for 10, 20, 30 years, there's no chance you're going to get through that. But let's say that you're selling to something like Taiwan. There's no border land that we are matching like nearby to each other. It's pretty far away a little bit, and it take about 4 to 5 days in order for container together. That's the market that you want to go into. All right, because people there also they have a high GB, so they're nicer, and also in order for you to getting these clients, they're not just so familiar with your market, they're not so familiar with the pricing structure in your market. So that way you could get the profit machine of yours and learn a sustainable business and live a good life. You don't want to deal with a market where you don't having this advantage of yours, right? If you are Indian, you probably have a lot of advantage that you could speak in like Hindi, whatever. You're walking around the big land of people and you have a bunch of different industry in order to export to other countries. Let's say that you are from the United States, you probably have a lot of advantage in order to import product rather than export it. So depend on your role, depend on your situation. You could be an exporter or importer, both gonna be good. So that's your advantage. You speak your own language, you live in the land of yours, and also you're selling to a country not familiar with your country. For example, in my case, I sold 6 containers of banana to an Iraqi market, because I have a lot of advantage in Vietnam, and the Iraqi person don't know anything about Vietnam. They cannot fly in there, so from there I could easily make a gap out of it. All right, so that's what you need to think about. You need to think of how to make a differentiate advantage that the world don't have compared to yours. So that's gonna make you a lot easier in order to move on to the ladder and make your first sales. Let's talk about sales, how to make a sales. All right, I already described how to choose the industry. So you probably got a little bit idea of how to choose the correct industry. That's not gonna messing everything up of yours. The next thing that you need to fly to a market that you wanted to sell to, or the city you wanted to sell to, or the city you wanted to buy to, depend on your importer exporter, and started to talk with the people, the real people who import and purchasing this container product. In the end, let's talk about exporter role, right? You fly into Taiwan, you start to shake these people's hand and have big smile on your face, and you started to say, hey, my name is Paul, I'm a commodity trader from Vietnam. What we do is that we're helping our client to purchase a whole container of this type of product at a very safe and also good price and good risk. The reason why we willing say that we have one best offer in market, that we're willing to send the whole container to you, that you open and see what's inside, and then after that you pay us later on. So you say something confident like that. Well, what if they don't have money? Then you should not do it. You choose different industries, too small industry. All right. The smallest size of a container could be having the value of like 3,000 to 4,000 US dollars. So if over time you cannot accumulate that amount of money, then you should go and find other things to do. Because it's not a good thing to start with this industry without money. All right, people say that you could do it. Yes, you could do it. You could do a back-to-back deal, but at the end of the day, it's very, very, like, no reason for people to work with a newbie and that don't know shit about the industry, never export before. It's very got to be low percentage to happen. So you don't want to be in that situation of pursuing that dream for years without trying to have a solid plan on how to make it happen. You could better go and raise funds and do it with your friend. You have 5, 10 friends. You could add them to a group and then open a company and start to export the first container to get the first thing, also reduce your risk. That's going to be the thing that I recommend you to do, rather than just sitting at home and expecting for the future to be bright. And when it's not going to happen like that, all right? So the thing is that after you go in there, shake people's hand, and you're able to say these things, you say that, hey, I got the best offer in the market. If you import a whole container from me, you only pay me after you open and see the product inside. So you at no risk at all. If you don't like it, I bring it back to my market. You at no risk at all. So I know you're such a gentleman. You're not gonna refuse such an offer, right? Because we are really hardworking person. We fly from Vietnam to be here to your country for a few hours, staying here just to expect to meet you for a little bit of your time. And we know that you have a really precious time, all right? We respect that. But you're not gonna refuse it for that, right? And they're probably not refuse you, all right? They're gonna let you into their warehouse and you started to discuss. Hey, my name is Paul and this is what we do. So we would love to discuss about what you're purchasing right now, what the product that you would love to buy, and also what grading and what detail of the product, what is the specification of the product, so that I could understand and go back to my country and process this at your wanted. So that I could send the whole container to you. At the end of the day, you open it, you love what you're seeing, and we could do business together for long term, 10, 20, 30 years. So we're just hoping that we could learn a lot from you in today. So you talk about that, you ask them a couple questions. Hey, what product are you import? What type of grading? What system? Whatever, right? You're asking the questions, genuinely asking questions. At the end of the day, after they sharing everything, all right, I think that we could do what you're saying, and we could do the specification that you love. The thing is, right now we only need one thing, all right? Would it be possible for us to send you the first container as soon as possible in next month? And they probably say yes, no, maybe, and then you could figure out that later on. You could, if they say no, they're gonna say that, oh, I'm full in stock right now, something. All right, so when would it possible for us to send a container over there when you're not full stock? Well, it's gonna be they're gonna say something. Let me check. All right, I'm gonna get back to you when you have it. You could say sort of thing, to get them hooked back to the idea that they're gonna work with you. All right. So after you make a sales, you're gonna say at the end of the day, all right, let's make it together. At the end of the day, if we send you the whole container, you're not gonna be at no risk. We're gonna take our risk for you. We're gonna bear all the cost for that, and hopefully we get it right and doing better for you for 10, 20, 30 years. And it's not gonna put you into bankruptcy if even we are doing something wrong. So that's a good thing, and you're not gonna lose any money. And the second thing, if we're honest, we're able to keep our word, say you a couple percentage for like 10, 20, 30 years. It's gonna be really compelling in the long run, so that you could say a bunch of percentage. And maybe it's gonna be a whole container in a few years on the road, and that's gonna be a lot of money. So after you're able to describe something like that, the thing is gonna be really simple for people to understand the idea, the offer of y'all is good. You need to have a good offer first. You don't need to having a stupid like superficial information that doesn't work, right? You need to have a really good offer at the beginning, so that at the end of the day, when you go talk to people, they're gonna take you seriously as a newbies. And that's how you do it. That's how you run the business. And hopefully that this speak is good enough for the whole things. Have a great day. This is Paul from Physical Trader. Have ideas to work with me in charge, going fresh produce, and whatever product from Vietnam, feel free to contact us. Bye.